Welcome, and it's great to have you here for this guided meditation and Dharma talk. My name is Jonathan Foust. Thank you so much for making the time to be here. Now, before we dive into this embodied meditation and talk, some acknowledgments. First of all, to our mindful movement teacher, Rita Moran. If you'd like to join Rita for mindful movement on Monday nights, 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, you can go to the Zoom link on my Facebook page or on my website, and that experience will bring you right up to here at 7:30. So, thank you, Rita. And thank you to Glenn Harrison, our producer, and to the Insight Meditation Community of Washington for hosting this. Got a bunch of free stuff. I got a mailing list you can sign up for. There's a weekly that goes out every week, believe it or not. And then there's an intermittent one where I give kind of a summary of talks and all my best photography for the last couple of months. That's available on my website. And all these talks are available online everywhere fine podcasts can be downloaded. Video on YouTube and Facebook, audio on everything else. Also, just to say, this is all offered freely. There's no access fee, there are no ads. It's all offered in the spirit of generosity. I have received so much through these practices. It's my honor to share my take on this stuff for you. And if you feel inspired to support me, thank you. You can make a donation on my website. On my website. Finally, shameless promotion. The next big thing coming up is December 7th. Tara and I are doing a day-long retreat at Catholic University called Choosing Love in Perilous Times. So if you feel a need to choose love in perilous times, come. And if you don't. Anyway, it's going to be a very rich, very, very rich exploration of what it means to keep coming back to awareness and love. So, with all that being said, let's take a little dive into our practice. And tonight's topic is on coming home to the senses. And it seems like a wonderful way to start the fall by refreshing our sense of embodied awareness. So, take a moment, look around, take in all the external data of where you are for the next approximately 13 minutes. We're going to go inward. So when you're ready, if you like, you can close your eyes. And notice, if you can, this shift between awareness focused outside of you and awareness focused inside. You might ask yourself right now, where do you feel the breath? What are the sounds that are alive and present right now? What's the temperature of the air against your skin? Can you feel the pressure points between your body and whatever you're sitting on right now? Awake to the senses. Receiving the senses is in many ways, you could say the essence of our practice. It's about using the body as a tool for coming right here and now. And you'll notice, of course, the mind will come with commentary, a constant narrative. But it's possible every time you get hijacked by the mind, that many times you can come back. So to help bring in a little more awareness of the here and now, you might like to slow down and deepen your breath. Coherent breathing, breathing in slowly to the count of 4 or 5, and then exhaling slowly to the count of 4 or 5. For the next minute or so, explore what it's like to match exactly the length of the in-breath with the length of the out-breath. In concentration practice, as you're doing right now, there's no real analysis around what's happening. There's just, you're either breathing with awareness or you're not. So you might now just sharpen your attention a little bit, breathing in slowly to the count of 4 or 5 and moving right into the exhalation to the count of 4 or 5. And now for the next 3 rounds of breath, is it possible to relax and at the same time sharpen your attention? And feel, if you can, the imprint. What has been the effect of this last minute or 90 seconds of focusing exclusively on your breathing? Do you perhaps feel a little bit more aware, a little bit more here? And now, for the next few minutes, I'll be mentioning a body part. When I mention a body part, explore what it feels like from the inside out, beginning with the crown of the head, the forehead and temples, the muscles around the eyes, the muscles of your face, the inside of your mouth, the jaw, the lips, the tongue, the root of your tongue, the back of your head and the base of your skull, the back of the neck and the tops of the shoulders, the space inside your throat, the space inside your lungs, the space between your breastbone and your spine, the space between your navel and your spine, the space between your left hip and your right hip. The volume of your arms and hands. The volume of your legs and feet. Sensing from the inside out, opening your awareness to the entirety of the felt sense of your body. Is there anything that could relax or soften right now? And now, if you would, bring your attention exclusively to the sense of your breathing, noticing where feel the breath the most predominant. And for the next few minutes, sense if you can keep your attention on the movement of the breath. Naturally, the mind is going to come in, but every time you notice the mind wandering, can you bring your attention back to the experience of this breath on the inside? You might explore two questions. What is your experience right now? And can you let it be? Can you be with it? And now, if you would, bring your attention to what it feels like to drop all technique. Notice what it's like to relax and to feel. Nothing to do, nowhere to go. Notice the quality of presence. If anything is shifted. And when you're ready, just noticing the space around you. You might deepen the breath and then very gently in your own time, you can begin your transition. Welcome back. Imagine that you're wandering in the jungle and you find this beautiful temple. And you intuitively sense that this temple, this space, is a doorway to awakening. You just have this sense that herein lies all the answers you have about life. How would you enter this temple? Maybe you would enter really slowly with reverence, with a desire to be as fully present to the majesty of this temple. Much or most of our life is spent looking for that doorway. As the Tibetans famously say, what we're looking for is closer than we realize. It's easier than we realize. And here I'll share a famous quote from the Buddha from the Satipatthana Sutta, where he says, "There is one thing, when developed and cultivated, leads to the realization of the fruits of knowledge and liberation." Once again, we don't want to miss this. There's one thing that, when developed and cultivated, leads to the realization of the fruit and knowledge and liberation. What is that one thing? Mindfulness directed to the body. Non-judging awareness directed to the body. Could that be? That's what we're going to talk about, or I'm going to talk about. I want to talk about four elements here that are just so crucial to our practice. First is treating your body as sacred ground, treating your body as that temple. I'd like to talk about how sensations are your doorway. They're the portal to presence. Third, I'd like to talk about how mindfulness of the body reveals the nature of reality. And finally, what it means to live in the body as if it was a temple. One of my jokes, which you've probably heard if you heard me give a Dharma talk before, is how for the first 25 years of my life, I assumed the reason I had a body was to make my head portable. That kind of sums up Western medicine, I think. We think of the body as this mechanistic thing to be figured out. But a monk once asked Ajahn Chah, who's one of the revered teachers in the Theravada tradition, about enlightenment. Like, well, what is enlightenment? Where do we find it? He pointed to his body and he said, "It's right here." We often bypass the body in our rush to get the peace or insight. And the question becomes, what if awareness of the body is the doorway? That's what blew my circuits when I stumbled into a yoga ashram oh so many decades ago. The possibility that the body is the doorway, the body is the vehicle. So in the Buddhist tradition, in the Theravadan tradition in particular, there's a lot of attention paid to what's called the first foundation of awareness, which is mindfulness of the body and investigation of the body. There's a lot of historical background about different techniques and so forth, and I'm going to touch on some of them. One is a classic story of a monk who's struggling in his practice and goes to his teacher and says, "What do I do about lust? I'm just overcome with lust and sensual desire." There are two suggestions that came up. One is a meditation, which was developed thousands of years ago, to contemplate the 32 parts of the body. I'm not going to name all 32 of them, but they're basically the solid parts and the liquid parts. And you systematically move your attention to investigate the reality of these different parts of the body. And now I'm inspired to actually do a meditation on this, not now, but another time if you're interested. The second instruction was to go to a charnel ground, to go and watch funeral pyres where bodies are being burned. And as you contemplate the ephemeral and impermanent nature of the body, it tends to put lust into a different framework, if you will. Some of the other embodied practices are the teachings about awareness of the body in the four postures. Awareness of the body when you're sitting, awareness of the body when you're standing, awareness of the body when you're walking, and awareness of the body when you're lying down. As you might begin to sense, there's no period or posture where you're not to be aware of inhabiting this moment to moment experience of your body. Another classical meditation, which I won't lead now, but I'd like to have this available for you at some time, is a meditation on the four elements, on the qualities of earth, the bones, the flesh, the teeth, on the element of water, of the liquids in the body, the element of fire, of the warmth, digestion, fever, and chill, on the element of air, on breathing, the movement in the limbs, intestinal gas. These meditations are not meant to cultivate disgust. If you're dealing with lust, they're an interesting antidote, but it's not about cultivating disgust, but it is about cultivating the awareness of reality, to see the impermanence of the body and thereby to see the wonder and the beauty of the body. These bodies are so fragile. It doesn't take much for things just to go haywire, as you may well know. So, if the body is sacred ground, what happens if you really listen to it? And there's this possibility, just to try it on, that the doorway to presence, the portal to present moment awareness, is the awareness of sensation. Now, the body is giving you signals all the time. And usually those signals are based on the following words: don't die, don't die, don't die. Your body is looking out for danger all the time. It's scanning for stuff that could kill you. It's kind of a defensive posture. And thank God. Otherwise, we'd be running into walls and cutting ourselves with knives and doing all kinds of horrible things. That's one side of the occasion, of the one side. The other side of the equation. Maybe the sensations in your body are also guiding you into to insight, into seeing more clearly. More on that later. When it comes to present moment awareness, another great teacher in this lineage, Mahasi Sayadaw, said, feeling is just feeling. Okay, well, what does that mean? There's feeling and then sensation. And then there's the narrative we add to it. There's an unpleasant feeling in your belly, and then the story that gets developed, the hallucination we go into, the memories we associate to that unpleasant feeling in your belly. And the question becomes, can you just experience feeling as feeling? Or how do you investigate the arising of sensation in the context of awareness itself? There's pure sensation, and then there's thought, and then there's what we would call emotion. Now, one could argue that an emotion is a sensation in the body plus a thought in the mind. Now, an example, grief is an interesting phenomenon. If you've experienced grief, if you've lost someone or something, you know that grief comes in rogue waves. It comes out of nowhere. Suddenly you're on this wave of grief, deeply unpleasant. On a meditation retreat, I was once in an interview sitting with a woman who was struggling around loss, and she felt a wave of grief, this flutter in her chest. She was reporting out a deep sense of ache in her heart. Everything in her wanted to move away from it. And I asked her, can you be with it just a little bit longer? That's a really big question. Can I be with it? She had a sense that in that moment with my presence that she could, and she kind of stayed with it. And she reported out how this flutter in her chest, this deep sense of ache in her heart, it began to grow and it began to get intense. And she spontaneously started sobbing. And she stayed with the sobbing. And eventually, the sobbing went into silence, a very, very deep silence. Huge amount of space in that silence she went into. And then she reported, without trying to make it happen, a sense of presence, a sense of gratitude began to flood in, a sense of kind of pleasant memories began to flood. Now, more on riding the wave later, but you can sense how here is a rising of a sensation that you don't want to feel. You elect to stay with it, and then it flowers, it expresses, and it transforms. And part of the challenge is to be aware of sensation without adding a story. This is key. So if you would, if you like, you can close your eyes. You don't have to. But think of some issue in your life on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe a 4 or a 5 or more. I'd like you for the next 30 seconds just to think about it. See if you can bring it a little bit more alive. Can you imagine it? Can you see it? Can you associate any words or sounds or tone of voice with this? And as you stream attention toward it, can you feel it on the inside? Now, here's the question. Only if it feels safe for you. Can you feel it on the inside without the story? Just as pure sensation. Now, you might take a few slow, deep breaths and just notice what occurred for you. Maybe if for a moment you could feel it without a story attached to it. Maybe it was challenging or hard for you. But it opens up a question. Can you trust the sensations that arise from inside? And what if, a hypothetical, what if these sensations are some form of guidance from within? Now, the tradition of Vipassana or insight meditation is about noting body sensations with equanimity. That is to say, noting them in the absence of pushing away or grasping, just letting them be. That's the practice. It's about training yourself to be aware of sensations, not as an obstacle, but more as a refuge. And naturally, you'll note how the more you begin to train your attention to notice the sensations without a story, you'll notice that they're going to fall into three categories. There's the all the sensations that are unpleasant, labeled from the mind as unpleasant. And then all the sensations that are pleasant. And then all the sensations that fall in between, the kind of the neutral sensations. This feeling tone, or what's referred to as Vedana, is a critical part of the practice. To notice when sensation arises and it's unpleasant, how the autonomic nervous system begins to want to push it away. Anything that's pleasant, you'll find yourself leaning toward. Anything that's neutral, you'll find kind of boring. So This opens up a very deep two-part mindfulness question in your meditation. The first is, what exactly is happening? That's the here and now experience. Second, how am I relating to this? So if you would take a moment, this is a quick Zen pop quiz. Close your eyes, take 2 breaths. Bringing your awareness to the felt sense or the sensations inside right now. Can you find a word or two that describes what's happening or what's predominant? And how are you relating to it? Is there any subtle grasping, any subtle pushing away? Maybe a cloudiness. Once again, if you like, you can open your eyes. These 2 questions, what is happening? What am I experiencing? And how am I relating to it are critical. And it opens up this inquiry. If you were to do this, to explore what it's like to honor your body as a temple and trust this unfolding of sensation, what might happen? And there's a classic phrase that says your issues are in your tissues. All of your memories, good and bad, are stored in your soma. They're stored in the body. And this is a leap. But here it's a question, could this be true? And we can only find out by experimenting. Could it be that the body, this primal energy of life force, of prana, of chi, of ki, of Holy Spirit, of animus, is actually programmed for healing and being whole? Is it possible, as the Buddha said, that within this body you will discover the origin of the world, the cessation of the world, and the path leading to the sensation of the world? It has been said that mindfulness of the body reveals reality itself. One of the things I notice is how my story, my narrative, and my behaviors and my actions all arise from this primal soup of energy, feeling, and sensation. A couple examples. Someone reported how sitting on a retreat, just sitting quietly, just being as mindful of the body as they could be. And as if you've sat a long retreat, sometimes you're really mindful of the body, sometimes you're not. But in this case, she felt this wave of heat kind of coming up from the core. And she felt this tightness forming in her jaw. And then she just watched this clench around the heart. And then this insight. Oh, this is how anger begins. Now, that was in a very deep moment of quiet and contemplation. But she saw how her experience of anger begins as a wave of heat, a tightness in the jaw, a clench around the heart. And can you sense how arising from energy and feeling, we move into story? And as I've said many, many times, how the story calcifies into a belief. The belief calcifies into a habit. The habit calcifies to behavior. Behavior calcifies into character. Character calcifies into destiny. Anger begins like this, as this inner wave. And imagine the possibility, just the possibility, that sometime when she's not on retreat, she catches those early warning signs. And before the anger proliferates, she might be able to bring awareness and compassion to it. Now, another person on the retreat was sitting quietly and noticed kind of an ache in the heart. And with it was this feeling of hunger, this pang of hunger, this deep sense of wanting. And suddenly he reported he was just caught in absolute fantasy, rotating between food, sex, and just wanting, wanting, wanting. And suddenly he realized, oh, this is the arising of craving. Craving is a sensation. I don't have to act on it. Now, again, this stuff is really, really subtle. But I would posit that when you find yourself caught in anger or you find yourself in a deep wanting state, if you could trace it back, you could trace it back to some constellation of arising sensations inside. And then the question becomes, is it possible to be aware of those fundamental primal arising states? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. The Buddhist tradition talks of three poisons of the mind. There are three states of mind that when they arise, it is utterly impossible to be present. These three are greed, hatred, and delusion. The wanting mind, the aversive mind, and the deeply confused mind. And it's very interesting. Is it possible when you're in those mind states that you could shift from whatever story, whatever details arise to the body itself and deeply feel them? How might that amplify transformation? Again, sometimes easy, sometimes yes. I'd like to just touch base again on back to grief because it's such a good example of how sensations arise. My roots are deep in yoga, and we would talk about these two fundamental elements. One is the arising of prana or energy. The other is chitta or awareness. And we are essentially energy machines and awareness machines. And one of the metaphors we would talk about is riding the wave. That when you begin to feel something's off, you will experience it as an inner clench, as a tightening inside. And what happens is when you experience a strong emotion or resistance, and you resist that resistance, it will intensify. And as it intensifies, it feels more and more challenging to be with. Now, if you've ever had an experience of just feeling tears and then riding that wave, the tears come through and the relief, or you've ever watched a child who's not as censored about their emotions, they feel things so intensively, it's expressed and then they're absolutely clear on the other side. That's riding the wave. For most of us, though, before you get to the peak or the climax of that wave, you get off the wave. And here, a shout out to the five hindrances in the Buddhist tradition, the five ways we tend to hop off the wave of resistance. One is the aversive mind, comparing, judging, blaming. Second is the craving mind, wanting, fantasizing, lost in desire. Third is the restless mind, worried, anxious, unable to settle. Fourth is the slothful mind. It's it's going numb. It's getting sleepy. It's disconnecting. And fifth is the doubting mind, where we doubt ourselves, we doubt our choices, we get paralyzed by doubt. Usually we have one or two that are specialties for getting off the wave. But if you can stay on the wave, if you can stay connected to those expressions of the felt sense, of the feeling tone of the body, to allow them to flower, Sometimes, not always, on the other side of the wave, after it peaks, you will experience a feeling of relief, a feeling that a weather system has just moved through your nervous system. Sometimes there's insight, like a cognitive insight into something you're holding on. A lot of times not. But somatic awareness, the direct experience of the life force inside, will bring the insights that liberate. Not by thinking about it, but by knowing it directly. Now, it's important to have an intellectual framework for this work. And riding the wave is a really helpful intellectual framework. Reminding yourself when you're caught in resistance, surf's up. Can I get on the wave and stay on the wave? But more than an intellectual framework, we have to live this practice. So how do you live in the body as a temple? Last thing I'd like to touch on before we complete. I've done 2 month-long silent retreats. And I usually sit in the back of the room. That's my nature. And I noticed that some people would bow before their meditation. And I noticed that as more people would go deeper in their meditation over the course of a month, more people were bowing for their practice. And I found myself kind of judging them. And a little backstory to that judgment. I spent a couple decades, or more than a couple decades, in an ashram, a devotional ashram. So we did lots of prostrations, lots of offering pranams, bringing your forehead down to the ground. I did a lot of bowing, and I very much resisted this. Um, Quakers were famous for not taking their hats off in front of nobility. So what the heck am I doing? Slamming my forehead to the ground multiple times a day. But I got inspired by a monk who shared his resistance to bowing. And he took this on as a conscious act of humility. I thought, okay, this is good for me. Every time I place my head beneath my heart, I'm going to ask myself, what am I surrendering to? And as I sat with that, I began to see bowing not out of dogma, but respect for the path. And ultimately, I began to see it as respect for the body. And the question to sense is, how might you bow to your body as a temple? What rituals, what little self-care habits could you create? We sleep with dogs on the bed. And in the summer, particularly, before I go to bed, I take a shower and I do a tick check. And I thought, why not make my tick check a ritual of self-care? For me, I like to do a little yoga flow before I go to bed, not just as a way to kind of help me sleep, but just as a way of kind of honoring the body, checking in with how my body feels at the end of the day. So, a question for you before we close. Can you imagine some rituals of self-care that you might employ now? What would your life be like if you treated your body as a temple? This is a challenge. When was the last time you looked in the mirror and thought, wow, you look amazing? I'm guessing not that often. We are programmed to hold ourselves and our bodies with some judgment or even contempt. Not fast enough, not strong enough, not young enough. But cultivating reverence and gratitude is the key to softening the tendency toward inner violence. Embodied presence is not just a way of being, it's not just a series of techniques. It's about bringing yourself into this deeply holy place of deep presence. of non-judging awareness. So, if you would, a final little reflection. Can you imagine if just for a moment your body is a temple, as a sacred vehicle for awakening? Can you sense right now this inner world of sensation, of everything that's happening through all the sense doors, the play of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral? Another quote from the Satipatthana Sutta: when the body is fully known, liberation is near. How might you cultivate greater reverence for your body? How might you cultivate kindness and reverence for how you might move, how you might eat and take your meals, how you might meditate, how you might relate to others? As you're ready, you can deepen your breath. You can let your eyes open. I hope you found this helpful. These are the elemental teachings in our practice: to treat your body as a temple, to honor the arising of sensation as this doorway to presence and insight. How, as you pay deeper and deeper mindfulness and investigation of the body, how it will inevitably begin to reveal more and more about the nature of reality, and how living in your body as a temple becomes a path unto itself. Thank you so much for your time and attention. May you and your body have a wonderful, wonderful evening and day. Many blessings in your practice.